Good evening, everybody. Oh, thank you to the kids in the back thank you. Good evening. I was speaking just to you. Welcome to Dunwoody United Methodist Church on this Wednesday night. My name is Josh Amerson. I'm one of the associate pastors here. Thank you all for making some time this evening to come and to share a meal and to spend some time hearing about what we believe God is calling us here at Dunwoody UMC to do and to be in the future. And we've got some folks who are very excited to share a vision of that later on. We are excited to have some wonderful music. I want to thank the kitchen staff for preparing a wonderful meal for so many people, if we could do that. Just one thing to share as far as upcoming events. If you are a pet owner, we're going to have a blessing of the animals for your pets this coming Sunday at 4 o'clock on the field in the spirit of the Feast of St. Francis. This is something that a lot of churches do on October 1st, thereabouts October 1st. I've made cat jokes in the past. I'm not going to make any jokes about cats, but if you have a cat, there will be a clergy there to bless that cat. It won't be me, but there will be someone on hand to bless your cat. So I hope that you'll come and bring kids and bring your pets this Sunday up to the field. If the weather's bad, we'll be in the gym, but we look forward to that. Normally, if you're here on Wednesday nights, you know that one of us, whoever's doing the announcements, runs around, and if you're having a birthday, we get your name and we find out how old you are before we sing happy birthday. It's going to be hard to do from up here, so I thought about having you raise your hands, and I will just guess how old I think you are. If we could, do we want to try that? No. Would you raise your hand if you have a birthday in the upcoming week? Does anybody have birthdays upcoming? There's a hand being raised over there. I actually know how old this guy is going to be. Patrick and Dixie Wedding are celebrating their 10th anniversary tonight. And for those of you who are good at math, that means Patrick has spent 1/6 of his life with that beautiful young woman over there. So I'll let you figure that out. Any other birthdays? At this table back here, whose birthday's back here? Jack. How old is Jack going to be? 107. Happy birthday, Jack. That's wonderful. Any other anniversaries besides the weddings? Oh, a birthday right here? Ava Womble. How old are we? 14 years old. Happy birthday, Ava. Any others that I missed? Okay, any other anniversaries besides the weddings? All right, well, let's sing happy birthday, and then we'll have our prayer. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. I didn't know I was on the screen, and that scared me in the middle of singing happy birthday. Can we bow our heads and let's have a prayer before we move on to the rest of our evening? Let's pray together. Gracious, all-loving, everlasting God, we are your church. We are your people. We are your sons and daughters. And we are so thankful, God, that you call each of us by name individually, that you call the name of this church as we come together as a community, and that you give us a purpose and a mission and a ministry in the world. Lord, help us to see a vision of what the future of that mission and ministry and purpose might look like tonight. Thank you, Lord, for all of your blessings upon this congregation, all of the many ways that your love and grace channels through us to one another. Lord, we pray that as we talk about our future, that we might talk not about how we can become great, but about how your name can be made great through us. Not about how we might be known as a church, but about how others might come to know you. We are your servants, God. Open our ears and open the eyes of our hearts to see how you would have us to serve. Lord, thank you for this time together. Thank you for this meal. Thank you for the people to our left and to our right. All of this is your blessing, and we give you thanks for it in the name of Christ. Amen.
Well, good evening, everybody. We're going to kick things off with a worship song. We would love it if you guys sing with us. I know you're eating. If you feel led, sing along with us. Most of you know me. I'm Doug. I'm the contemporary worship leader. You all know this guy, Sonny. This is my friend Barry. So we're going to lead you guys in one song. Real quickly, Dan likes to say, and rightly so, that we're one church with two worship styles. So I thought it would be appropriate tonight to kind of blend that together. We're going to do a song, traditional hymn that you guys all know, Blessed Assurance. We're going to mold it with a modern bridge called My King is Coming Soon. So it's kind of the traditional and the contemporary coming together. So we're going to have the lyrics up on this screen, and we would love for you guys to worship along with us as we welcome Almighty God into this place tonight. Amen? We love you guys. You know this. It goes like this. We love you, Jesus. Here we go. Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. Y'all sing out. Oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation, purchase of God, born of His Spirit, washed in His blood. This is my story. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. Next verse. Perfect submission, at rest. Y'all sing out here. It's good. Keep going. That's beautiful, y'all. Filled with His goodness, lost in His love. This is my story. This is my story. This is my song. Jesus, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. All right, here's the new part now. It goes like this. My King is coming soon. He will roll the clouds away. Light of heaven bursting through. Oh, what a glorious day. Yes, my King is coming soon. He will roll the clouds away. Light of heaven bursting through into that glorious day. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song, praising my Savior all the day long. This is my story. This is my song. My King is coming soon. He will roll Let's applaud the King of Kings, Jesus. Good worship, y'all.
Well, good evening, everybody. And delighted to see you. Thank you for being here. We are so pleased that you have taken time out of your busy schedule to be here with us tonight for this very, very special evening. Before we jump into it, I want to take just a moment, and would you join me in saying thanks to Sonny and Doug and Barry for leading us in some music. Tonight, as you know, we are going to be talking about moving forward together. And we're going to be sharing a vision that has been given to the church and how we're trying to move toward that vision. And you're going to hear more about that in just a moment. To lead us through our time together, we have Bob Preston, who is the chairperson of our building committee, and he'll be sharing some things with you. And then we also have Neil Purcell and Sean Taylor, who are the co-chairs of our capital campaign committee. And together, these three gentlemen are going to be sharing a lot of information with you. There will also be time for you to ask some questions and for them to respond to those questions. So as we begin to move into this time, let's start by thanking them for all of the work that they have done and for being here tonight to share with you. Would you join me in doing that? Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sean Taylor, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight. To kick us off, by now you've all heard we're here tonight to talk about our building program and our Moving Forward Together capital campaign. But before we started talking about the what, we thought it was very important to discuss with you the why. Why are we thinking about doing this before we get into the details? And the why actually goes back a number of years ago. In 2015, the church sat down and said, who are we and where are we going? What's our vision for who we want to be as a church? And the church worked very hard to come up with our vision. And I know as much as it might pain you to say it and recite it, this is the part where you all do it together. Ready? To be a
dynamic Christian community of fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ.
This is the part where we go up in energy, not down in energy. To be a dynamic Christian community of fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. We developed that vision for what we wanted Dunwoody United Methodist Church to be. And in 2016, that vision was introduced and adopted. Now, for those of you who know anything about a vision is great, but without a strategy to back it up, it's really just a hope or a wish. You really don't have the tangible steps that you need to be able to get from here to there. And the church recognized that. And in recognizing that, it put together a strategic planning task force made up of 9 different members of your congregation representing different constituencies, balance of men and women, different age groups, to come up with how we were going to put a strategy together to execute on that vision. And in 2016, that strategic plan was introduced to the church council, talked about, and ultimately adopted. Now, the strategic plan fits very nicely in with our vision. It aligns with the vision and the different components of that vision. So, for example, we're dynamic in our worship styles. We are fully devoted members of our church looking to execute in a high level on our programs and in our missions. And as followers of Jesus Christ, we look to grow spiritually and ultimately to transform our lives for God our Father. Now, the strategic plan is a 5-year plan. This is not something that we're going to execute and finish overnight. In fact, the strategic plan has 112 separate initiatives for us to work on in that 5-year period. And I don't know about you, but if you give me 112 things to do today, I probably won't move forward very far because I'll just get stressed about how many things there are to do. And the church council wisely recognized that. And so they focused in on our initial priorities. The first things we wanted to focus on from September of 2016 to August of 2017. And they honed in on 4 priorities. And one of those priorities, one of the most important priorities it recognized at first, was how do we enhance our worship services and the experience for our congregation in worship. That initiative, when adopted, began immediately, and it was worked on by several different people in several different committees. We looked at a number of factors. What are our styles of worship here at the church and abroad? Worship times. How many of you may have heard there's been a change in worship times recently? Anybody got that message? Worship times was examined as a part of how to enhance our worship experience at the church. We looked at trends of worship services, and one of the most important things we looked at is unification of our church. Sometimes it feels like we're 2 churches under one roof rather than one church body worshiping in different ways. And unification was a very important component of worship enhancement. We wanted families worshiping together. We wanted kids in altar seats, in seats with their parents worshiping together, because studies clearly show kids that worship with their parents when they grow up will go to church. These were all very important aspects of worship enhancement. Now, given some of those initial studies and results, one of the things that was clearly important was trying to unify our worship services together rather than be separated in different parts of the building. And to do so, the council clearly recognized that we needed to look to see whether or not our sanctuary could in fact do that we could have all the forms of worship that we undertake in that building. Recognizing that, they knew we needed to look at possible renovations to the sanctuary to accommodate all the forms of worship we have. And so, in the first part of 2017, your church made a recommendation for a building committee. The building committee was to take a look very specifically at things we would need to do to the sanctuary to be able to accommodate those different styles of worship. The nominations committee at the church in February of 2017 made recommendations for the, it's kind of a cascading waterfall, isn't it? I feel like I'm in a barrel going over that thing right now. There we go. God is in this house. Thank you. So in February of 2017, the nominations committee came back with a 10-member building committee to be chaired by Bob Preston, who's here with us tonight. And in March of 2017, the church council adopted the building committee's formation, and the building committee immediately went to work. And from March of 2017 until May of 2017, the building committee went and looked very specifically as to whether we could make these renovations. And it gave an initial report in a charge conference in May that said, yes, we can in fact do this. And it made a motion to the charge conference asking for permission to further look at detailed drawings and come back to the charge conference with a more detailed plans for renovating the sanctuary to accommodate both forms of worship. And it also asked preliminarily if we could begin a capital campaign that would fund the costs of those renovations. Initial estimates for the cost of the program were $5.6 million. And so the charge conference heard this motion, adopted this motion, and since May of 2017, both the building committee and the capital campaign have begun. So with that, I'd like to ask Neil Purcell to come forward and tell you about different aspects of the capital campaign.
Thank you very much, Sean. In looking out there and looking back here, it's obvious I didn't get the casual message. I'm not buttoning in my coat. That is casual for me. So This is a great day for Dunwoody United Methodist Church, and it's a particularly great day for our senior minister and his wife. Meredith Brown went home today. I hope you all listened carefully to what Sean was talking about, because in that discussion, he pointed out that there were several people from all factions of this church involved in getting us where we are today. And I'd like to make a statement at the beginning of my brief comments here. I am a certified public enthusiast for this program. Why? Martha and I have been members of this church for 45 years. Every time I say that, I feel a little bit older. But been here 45 years, and I can tell you, I've seen a lot of changes, a lot of programs implemented, but I don't think any of them have the potential that this one has to really change this church, grow our membership, and make more disciples for Jesus Christ than this program. So I hope all of you at the end of this presentation, and when you get back home and have a chance to discuss it and reflect on it, would come to the same conclusion. Now, to get this done, to raise this money, we had to assemble a very strong team. You see their names. I'm not going to call out the names, but I'd like for you to see their faces. So if they're in the audience, and this includes the Cox Curry consulting firm that's been consulting with us since the beginning. If you're in the room and you're on this committee, your name's on this board, please stand so people can see who you are, please. And looking around, they're in different tables, so if you have questions, and you're at a table with one of these committee members, you can ask them questions, have a dialogue. Please don't do it while we're still up here trying to make this presentation. This is an outstanding committee. One person that is not here tonight, and she was our quarterback from day one. Allison Fears, our Director of Marketing and Communications, is in Kansas City at the Church of Resurrection. We could not have done this, and we would not be here tonight if Allison Fears had not been our quarterback all the way through, as I say, from day one. Day one, in our case, was June the 6th. That's when our committee had its first meeting. We had two objectives. We wanted to come out of this with a fully funded campaign, meaning no permanent debt. Our second objective was to set a finite deadline that the campaign would end. We're not going to drag this campaign on. It will end October the 29th. So those were our two objectives. It had three phases. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. The first phase was one-on-one visits in homes. None of these phases is more important than the other. They're collectively all important. That phase we wanted to have, when completed, 50% of our total $5.6 million, which was our goal. We had 50.1% on that day. Second phase consisted of visiting with Sunday school classes, Bible study groups, the choir. In total, Sean, Bob, we visited 16 different groups, I think, in total. Some of you were there. We continued our calls, our one-on-ones. At the end of that phase, today, September the 27th, we wanted to have 75% of our goal. The third phase begins today. That's the church-wide phase. It will run for approximately 4.5 more weeks. In all of the discussions we've had with you and that we will have, we've stressed three ways of giving. The old-fashioned way of cash, with a check, through a contribution of common stock, or out of your individual retirement account. They all have distinct tax advantages. We'd recommend that you consider all three. Talk to your tax accountant. If you don't have a tax accountant, you can talk to Sean or me or any member of our committee. We can tell you what the benefits are. There's some real benefits to doing this. The way you pledge, either through a written form, which we've been using to date, or as of today, you can now go on the website and very easily find where you can make a pledge on the website. I've actually done that. It works. If I can do it, anybody out there can do it. So it's very easy to do, and would encourage you to consider making that pledge using the website. So where are we? I said we wanted to be at 75% of our goal at this meeting. We are at $4.2 million, which is 76.1% of our goal. So you should actually be applauding yourselves. Many of you were involved in helping us reach that goal. That means that we still have about $1.4 million to raise. In many respects, while our committee met today and celebrated the accomplishment, and it was a real celebration, I think everybody was relieved. That committee, when we had our first meeting on June the 6th, came to that meeting not knowing what they had gotten into. After the first meeting or two, most of them wish they had not gotten into it. So. But we celebrated the fact that we're 5% plus. We still have a long way to go. Approximately the same level of giving is going to be required over the remaining 4.5 weeks per week as we have achieved in the first 14 to 15 weeks of the program. So that's a tall task. We're depending on you that have not yet made a pledge to help us in that regard. And when you go home and think about this, reflect on it, think how you can help us achieve this final leg, final phase of our campaign. Now I'm going to turn it over to a man that's going to review some of the details that all of you are waiting to see as to how this is going to play out. Bob Preston. Bob?
Thank you, Neil. This will be the fun part of the program because I'm the only one up here tonight that is not a CPA. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here. It's wonderful to see so many of you. My name is Bob Preston. I've actually been engaged in this program for close to a year. I've been chair of the building committee since we formed it back in the spring. There are 10 members of that committee. We're hardworking. We've put in a tremendous amount of effort in the last 6 months to move this program forward and get it to the point where it is today. And it's by no means complete. It's still a work in progress, but I would tell you that it does have some momentum. We have hired an architect. We've hired a general contractor. We've hired an organ builder. We're currently getting input from as many as a dozen different consultants. We're working with members of staff. We're working with you, members of the congregation. We've had incredible input and feedback. It's been a constant, collective, and at times very passionate effort with the committee. I wouldn't mind seeing, I know that there's a number of the building committee members here tonight, and I'd like to see if I could get you guys to just briefly stand so we can recognize you. Oh my gosh, please tell me there are a few of you out here. I want to say thanks for your support personally. I want to thank you on behalf of the church for all the dedication and effort that you've put in. I want to remind you that it's a 2.5-year commitment. We're only 6 months into it. And if any of you have any questions at the end of this session, I would encourage you to seek out any one of these members. Myself, I'll be here till the end, and we'll be happy to listen to your input. So our worship enhancement program is about a lot of things from a building committee perspective and a capital campaign perspective. It's really about bringing traditional worship and contemporary worship together in a singular unified space, that space, of course, being the sanctuary. There are 7 key components, 7 initiatives, if you wish, that we need to address to make that happen. The first component is the modification of the chancel, the sanctuary, and the balcony. Essentially, we're relocating the choir. We're moving them up to the front of the sanctuary in the chancel area. We're going to build a new choir loft. We're going to accommodate 75 to 100 choir seats. We're going to build organ platforms and enclosures and speaking facades on either side of that choir loft to accommodate a new organ. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. There we go. We're up and running on the screen. I'm talking about the chancel sanctuary balcony. We're going to expand the stage by 22 feet. It's going to bring it much closer to the congregation. It's going to put the pulpit in a much closer relationship to the congregation. We're going to lose a few pews, but we're going to pick up some seats in the balcony. And at the end of the day, it'll be a net gain of about 40 congregational seats in the sanctuary. The second component is heating and air. It takes a long time for us to heat and cool the sanctuary. We're trying to address that in a number of ways. We're proposing to add some supplemental air conditioning systems in the chancel area. They'll not only air condition and heat and cool the chancel, but actually throw some additional air out into the sanctuary. We're going to relocate some of the return air grills, which are currently up in the ceiling, which is not the best place for them to be. We're going to put them down in the front of the chancel area so that we can encourage airflow across the sanctuary. And we've got a replacement program. A big part of the cost of the heat and air is a equipment replacement program. Our equipment now is about 15 years old over there in the sanctuary, and it's starting to break down on a fairly routine basis. So we'd like to see if we can begin to replace that over the next 3 to 10 years. The third component is acoustics. And I could talk for a couple hours on acoustics because I've learned an awful lot about acoustics in the last couple of months. But we have an acoustical gem of a sanctuary. That means we have a lot of very hard surfaces, and the noise and the sound bounces around incredibly well. That's really good for organ and choral music. It's not so good for speech intelligibility, for the spoken word. You may know we have a big speech intelligibility issue in the sanctuary. And it's definitely not good for Doug's contemporary worship band when he gets there and he's playing inside of the sanctuary. So we have to make some modifications to accommodate those. We're going to add some acoustical treatments. It's going to make speech and the spoken word much, much clearer and more crisp than it is today. We'd add some acoustical banners that are going to drop from the ceiling. These banners will be in a number of different places, strategic locations in the sanctuary. They'll be used only for contemporary service, and they will help absorb some of the sound from the band so that it doesn't echo around the room as it does for the organ. So we're working very closely with a number of people, including the sound engineer, and I've gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of concerns about choral music and organ music, and I can say very confidently that these modifications that we're making will have a significant improvement on speech and on the contemporary band, but we do not expect them to have much at all, maybe a tenth or two of a second on the organ and choral music. The fourth component is sound, kind of goes hand in hand with acoustics. We're going to add a new sound system. That's the proposal. It will be an upgraded sound system with a projection of sound that will be significantly improved over what we currently have in the fellowship hall for contemporary. It's going to solve the speech intelligibility issues that we have at the moment in the sanctuary for traditional service. We're going to get a new sound console that I know Doug and Ed are very excited about. We're going to get new equipment on the sound side. I've been working pretty extensively with Ed Trundle, with Doug Allen, with our AVL supplier, Vision Quest. And I feel pretty good that we're getting the best sound system that we could possibly get for the dollars that we are spending, and they're not an insignificant amount of dollars. The fifth component is a new organ. Our current organ, our existing organ, is almost 60 years old. And that's not that old as organs go, that's kind of middle-aged. But our organ kind of sat in a trailer for over a year in the parking lot while our current sanctuary got built. And I don't know that it ever really fully recovered from the heat and the humidity. So it's not in the best of conditions. It's also a very small organ, so it has very limited, what we call tonal range. It's a little harsh, which makes it difficult for the organ to lead effective congregational singing. It's also got what we call poor acoustic sightlines, which means that the sound from the organ doesn't travel well into the sanctuary, and the reason for that is because the organ is at the back of the sanctuary and it's up on top of the balcony. So we're proposing a new organ. It's going to be built by Quimby Pipe Organs out of Missouri, one of the finest organ builders in the country. We went through a competitive RFP to select them. We've been working hard with them over the last 6 months, with Sonny, with Mary Ruth, So I'm confident that it's going to be a very fine organ. We've also worked really hard to get the price down, and I want to mention this because the day that the organ gets installed, it's going to be worth about $500,000 more than what this church will pay for it. And I think that's nothing more than just a tribute to the power of competition and negotiation, and it's going to hugely benefit this church. The sixth component is lighting. We're proposing to replace all the existing lighting. We have halogen lighting, old-fashioned halogen lighting, 500 watt. We're going to replace that with LED fixtures. And there are three big benefits to going LED. The first is it's going to reduce the heat coming out of those existing lights, which is going to help us on the cooling side. The second is it's going to reduce our maintenance costs. LED lights last 15 to 20 years as opposed to 3 to 6 months, so we won't have to replace them nearly as often. And the third is that it's going to reduce our energy bills because LED just takes a lot less power. In addition to existing lights we're replacing, we're actually going to add some supplemental lights, some multicolor LED lights that will help us, if you wish, change the mood and the ambiance of the sanctuary as we transition from traditional worship over to contemporary worship. Okay, the seventh component, the last component, is video. We're adding 2 new video screens on either side of the choir loft. They'll be much closer to the congregation. They're going to disappear into the ceiling, not too different from the current screens. Of course, the current screens are all the way at the back of the chancel. We can't reuse those because of the construction that's taken place on the chancel. We're also going to add a third screen, a central large image magnification screen for live video feed, which will be used for contemporary worship service. It's not intended to be used for traditional. And it's important to just bear in mind that all of these screens are totally retractable and will disappear into the ceiling when they're not in use. We're going to add remote cameras, which will enhance our TV and live streaming capabilities, and we're going to replace our video projectors with high-definition technology. So there is, I've got the budget there at 5.6. There's about $700,000 of contingency and soft costs. That's a pretty healthy contingency. Hopefully we won't have to get into that. It's a total campaign cost of $5.6 million. And here's a quick conceptual rendering. Some of you may have seen this already. This is how we imagine traditional service. It's a work in progress, I will tell you. But it's close. It's not too far, I think, from what it will finally look like. You can see the choir in the middle with the new choir loft, the existing cross. You can see the video screens that, again, will retract up into the ceiling. You can begin to see the organ and what's called the presentation facade. These are actually presentation pipes. They'll probably be gold to pick up on the gold in the cross, and they'll be a part of the organ. And hopefully you can pick up that we've been conscious about the design and that it will fit and blend with the current and existing design in the sanctuary. So it'll look, hopefully, as if it has been there from day one. There is a second rendering, which is how we imagine contemporary service will take place on a Sunday morning. So we're looking to switch from the one that I just showed you over to this in the space of about 20 minutes or so. Again, this is a work in progress. It's by no means finalized, but you can begin to see these 5 acoustic banners that have dropped down from the ceiling in the chancel area behind the band. You can pick up on this image magnification screen that is in the middle that'll have live feed. And you can pick up on the same 2 video screens on either side. Again, all of this is retractable. You can also pick up on a 10-foot wooden cross just there in the left. We will be building a lightweight, portable, new wooden cross, 10 feet tall, which will be used for contemporary service. It'll actually have a hinge in the back. It will fold over so we can carry it on and off the stage, and we'll have the ability to place it as we wish on the stage for contemporary worship. And then let me just touch quickly on schedule. I won't go through all of those, but suffice to say, pending the success of this capital campaign, we hope to start construction this coming May. And we will finish everything, with the exception of the organ, next October. That's just about 1 year from today. We can't finish the organ because the organ takes 1.5 years to build. So we hope to get everything else done, all neat and clean, finished up, and then we'll wait until May the following year of 2019, and we'll bring the organ in, we'll install it, and by October of 2019, which is almost exactly 2 years from today, we hope to be complete with the program. So in conclusion, it's a journey. I mean, we're at the beginning of that journey, and I know and I recognize that we've got a long way to go. Our campaign is about moving forward together. I will tell you that this program, this worship enhancement program, has moved forward, I believe, very effectively in the course of the last 6 months. When I first came into it a year ago, I'd say that we were a bit of a divided church. I'm increasingly feeling a sense of togetherness as I continue to engage. And I think my hope and my prayer tonight is a fairly simple one. And it's just that I hope that you will feel as strongly about this program as we do that are up here on this stage. And that concludes. I'm going to hand, I think, back to Neil. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You didn't applaud for me. Thank you. Y'all saw the two renderings. The first rendering was, well, the renderings will go the contemporary service, and we're going to change everything around and go to the traditional service. And on that particular Sunday, when we do that for the first time, Sean and I are going to be taking a vacation somewhere. Bob Preston is going to be in the sanctuary to make sure it works. But, all right. A few weeks ago, I was approached by a member of this church who had made a significant contribution to this campaign. And he said, Neil, we believe in what we're doing here. It's a wonderful idea, and we want to support it. And he did. They did. But he also said that we have been involved in missions work for a long time, and we want to do something very different. So what he and his wife wanted to do was to issue a challenge grant. In that, he would contribute $500,000 in cash to set up a missions endowment fund that can only be used for missions work as considered by the missions committee in this church. It's a very generous offer. He had one string attached to the offer. And he said, that's contingent upon your committee finding a way to reach $5.6 million. Naturally, the first question that you would ask if you were in my shoes at that time was, okay, thank you very much. That's a phenomenal offer. What happens if we only get 5.5 million? His answer was, you get nothing. Now, in thinking about it, that was exactly the right answer. Any other answer would have taken the pressure off me, the committee, and you. Any other answer would have taken the pressure off. So we accepted the challenge. Our committee considered the offer, unanimously supported it, and we're delighted to announce it to the entire congregation, or those of you who are here now, and you'll hear more about it over the next 4 or 5 weeks. Is something that we're extremely pleased to have. So, help us reach the $5.6 million. It really will trigger a significant missions endowment fund. We've never had one in this church. We very much want to trigger that challenge grant. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Sean.
Thanks, Neil. This is the part, oh wow. I was told when you get applause to leave, so. This is the part where we call you to action, where we're all called to action. We hope what you've heard tonight from Bob and from Neil relative to the campaign, relative to the building program, to the mission endowment fund possibilities that we have has inspired you and motivated you to want to come forward and join this campaign. The Moving Forward Together campaign is the essential first step for this to happen. Ultimately, we need to have success to be able to transform our worship and realize some of these great opportunities that we have. We are extremely grateful to the families that have already made pledges and commitments to this campaign. Some of you are here tonight, and we thank you so very much for making that commitment. To reach our goal, this is the plan that we laid out. This plan gives different giving levels and different giving opportunities. We have had givers in each of these categories already, and we are certainly hopeful that as you prayerfully go and consider how your family might support the campaign, you will consider a gift in one of these levels. To reach this important next step, though, we really need every family to prayerfully consider and ultimately participate in this campaign. We want 100% participation. And please understand that every gift, no matter the size, matters to the successful achievement of our campaign. A gift to the capital campaign needs to be incremental. You'll each be receiving in the mail tomorrow, Friday, or Saturday, depending upon when it's delivered, a package that will contain a brochure talking about a lot of the things we spoke of tonight, a pledge form, a range of gifts forms similar to what you just saw, the ability to have a return envelope here to Jim Boyer at the church. Also tonight, as you leave, if you would like to pick up a pledge form and that information, out by the elevators as you go to the stairs, members of the building committee and capital campaign committee will be there and can hand those to you if you would like. Also, if you feel so moved to go ahead and leave your pledge form here tonight, there is a basket in which you can do that by the elevators as well. You'll notice on the pledge form there is two aspects of giving. There's the capital portion and our annual stewardship campaign. We do not want families to take from their annual stewardship giving to give to the capital campaign. We will unintentionally harm the operations, the budget of this church if we do that. And so you will see a section on the form to commit to both the annual stewardship for 18 and 19. And what we are asking you to do is to at least hold your giving at the levels you gave or plan to give in 2017, not go down to the extent you can do that, and incrementally give to the capital campaign. And you'll notice a section on the pledge form to be able to do that, and you can make that pledge and pay for it over 2017, 2018, and 2019 over 3 years. As Neil alluded to earlier, this campaign is going to run through October the 29th. And at that point in time, we'll look to see where we are, accumulate the information, and plan to have a called charge conference in November to review the updated plans from the building committee and Bob, and to have a presentation from the capital campaign committee on where we're at. Again, 100% participation really will matter for the success of this. So as we wrap up here, we want to turn it out to you for questions. I'm going to ask Bob and Neil to come up and join me here to help answer some of those questions. Ann West and Denise Chastain will be walking around with microphones. So if you have a question, we'd ask that you raise your hand. We'll call upon you. We'd ask that you speak your question to the microphone so that everyone can hear, and we'll do our best to answer. Okay? Ann has one here in the front.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. There are those in this room, probably like me.
Let me hold the mic.
I don't want to.
So they can't hear you because you keep moving it.
I promise I won't. Oh, I don't like this. I like to hold my old ice cream cone. I always have. Some of us in the room, I'm one of them, is committed to this church and want to be a part of this campaign. But 10,000 and 20,000 and 50,000 are numbers that circumstances are probably not going to allow us to make that achievement. I want to make a one number comment, and it's $25. $25 is something that doesn't seem unachievable. Just think of the things we spend $25 on every week and don't even think about it. If we were to say that we would commit $25 to this church every week for 3 years, 39 months, that would be about $3,900. Now, if we could get a number of our members to do that, maybe even put an envelope in the pocket of the church for guests that might want an idea of what to give as appreciation for being guests, of $25. If we would get 360 people a week to do that for 3 years, that comes to $1,404,000. That meets the endowment objective. That meets the objective of the goal. I'm not taking away from your calls to people, and I'm not taking away from those that want to give $4,000 or $8,000. God bless you. I wish I was in your category. But $25 is something I think we can all do. We got, 1,000 people that come to church every Sunday? And maybe if we could get a third of those to give $25, we can make our goal. Just a thought.
Thank you very much, Rick, for your comment. And I very much appreciate the way you laid that out. Sean indicated that every gift is important, regardless of the amount. What you just laid out is a significant gift. I would encourage each of you to consider that and consider the amount that you might be willing to offer. It's not important. It's not critical that you do that every week. You could do it all at one time. The math is on a per week basis, but any amount is important. And just on that point, just to show you how important it is, we have met with the youth in the church, and we are meeting with the children in the church. We're not expecting significant dollars, if any. Quite frankly, we don't really care. What we do care is that they be exposed to this and understand what we're doing. We would like to have 100% participation. Realistically, that's probably not going to happen, but as close to 100% as we possibly can get. Thank you very much for your comment. Okay, come on. I know some of you have got some concerns because I've heard them from some of you. So let's talk about it while we're here as a group.
Do I get to hold it? No, okay. I'm in the choir, and we sat in the front for the last month or so. Have you considered a screen that's visible from the chancel area? Because the screens now, we can't see anything. And the second point is that the sound in the chancel area is almost non-existent too. So I hope your sound has a plan to make the preaching and things here so we can hear it in the chancel area.
Yeah, we do, actually. We've considered both. We'll actually have two, I forget the actual size, but we'll have two screens mounted to the face of the balcony for the benefit of the pulpit, the ministers, and the choir to see what's going on. It'll obviously mirror everything that's up on the video screens. Hopefully that'll solve that issue. And yeah, we'll actually have sets of speakers that will be directed specifically to the chancel area that will not give feedback. So that again, the whole chancel area, right now, as you know, the chancel area is not really covered very well. It's not effectively covered, and you can't hear yourself up there. So yeah, sound is one of the biggest component parts of this program. And speech intelligibility and making sure that we adequately cover the chancel is a big part of it. So yeah, I feel we've got both of those covered for you.
I wonder if there'll be room down, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I wonder if there'll be room down front for the handbell choirs, tables, and all of that equipment.
There will. There'll be lots of room because we're extending the stage by 22 feet. So there'll actually be ample room. And we're in the midst of actually putting together almost a dozen different plan configurations for the various functional uses of the chancel area, including, for example, bell ringing, extensions, weddings, funerals, special occasions, orchestras, concerts. So yes, we're working pretty hard to evaluate all of those configurations.
Talk too about moving to the front of the church and how this decision to move to the front of the church as opposed to the back was made.
We consciously didn't talk to the choir. In fact, we did everything we could not to involve them in this decision. No, we've spoken at length to the choir. Choir has been very integrally involved with this move, and there are probably those in the choir that are more qualified to answer that question, but I've probably met with the choir on at least 3 occasions. And the move up front, I can tell you, I believe has been not only unanimously received, but it's been very, not well, but it's been embraced very, very well.
I think in answer to that question, there are varying degrees of enthusiasm for the move down front from the individual choir members. Realistically, and look, there are so many moving parts to the program that we are laying out here, including the changing service times, that it's impossible to please 100% of the people 100% of the time. And in fact, if you get anything like a significant majority on each of the issues, you can consider that a success. We understand that. At the end of the day, though, I hope all of you sit back and take a deep breath and think about the benefit that this is going to provide for Dunwoody United Methodist Church. There are pieces that, if I were to go around the room individually, there are pieces of this program that virtually every one of you would find some distaste for, including me. I don't like leaving at 11:05 or starting at 11:05 and leaving at 12 o'clock and mixing with all the Baptists that are having lunch. But it's a sacrifice. All of us, every single person in this room is making a sacrifice. If you're in contemporary worship, you're coming 15 minutes early. And some of you don't want to leave the fellowship hall, but you see the potential to grow 2x by going into the sanctuary. So you're giving up the fellowship hall, the ambiance, you're giving up the ability to have your kids be more comfortable in that setting. The traditional people are giving up the 9 o'clock service, except we do have the prayer and communion service available for the people that really want to go there. But they are coming in later. The choir, some people in the choir probably are not, as I said, as enthusiastic about coming down. But they're doing it for the church. I tell you, if you were here on August the 9th, Dan, was that the first service? August 9th, I think. When the choir, if you were in the traditional service, and when the choir processed down front and arrayed around the chancel area, it was a momentous occasion. I think everyone's spirits were lifted, and that's continued to be the case. So let's look at what we're going to get at the end and try to work our way through some of the differences that we may have, hopefully most of them minor.
We have a question up front here, Ann.
Thank you.
How has the time change affected our attendance, and why are we no longer publishing in the bulletins what the attendance is for church and Sunday school?
So I can partially address that, but I would probably ask Dan to address that a little bit as well, because we had church council just a few weeks ago, and Dan gave a report, as he normally does, about attendance since the worship times changed. So Dan, do you mind just updating the folks that are here about that?
Yes. I can tell you from August 6th. Can you hear me now? Okay, there we go. From August the 6th through the first Sunday in September, and I believe that was September 3rd. Is that right? Anyway, the first Sunday in September, we did an analysis of that leading up to the church council meeting. And during that period of time, and I can't remember the exact figures, but there was significant growth in our worship attendance. As it relates to, and honestly, I don't remember the exact numbers, but Sean, do you
I
vaguely
think it
remember?
was close to roughly 100
I think
people.
that's right.
The attendance for last year versus this year was up roughly 100 people
During that same
during
period.
that same
That's-
time span.
That's
So
correct.
somewhere in the 8 to 12% range would be my guess, depending upon the number.
And then during Sunday school, and this has been a little trickier to try and come up with, because the way we're measuring the attendance is a little bit different. So we're trying to compare apples to apples, and it's very difficult to do. But I will tell you that David Melton, who oversees our Christian education area, gave a report at the church council in which he related what the Sunday school teachers have been saying, what various people have been telling him, and even some experience as it relates to the people who are wanting new classes started. And what he indicated is that there's been a level of enthusiasm that has taken place in those Sunday school classes, and the growth, the adult Sunday school classes have seen a significant growth during that period of time.
Yes,
Isn't that what you heard? I mean, that's what
we heard. And does that address your question well enough? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We probably have time for one more question because it's almost 7 o'clock. We know that people have different activities, so we want to get down and have this last question answered, and then we'll call upon Dan to come out and close us in prayer. And then Neil and Bob and myself will stay behind afterwards if you'd like to stay and ask some additional questions. So Denise, you have a final question?
What's the plan in terms of relocation when in terms of the services when the sanctuary is under construction?
We hope to be down out of the sanctuary for just about 2 months. May end up being just a little bit less than that. We've got about a 5 to 6 month construction period from May of next year to October, for example. And the first 2 months of that, really the first part of summer, I mean, we've tried to make it so that it's summer lower attendance. We're probably going to need to be out of the sanctuary, but only for probably 8 weeks or so.
So during that time, the plan would be that the 11 a.m. worship service would happen here in the fellowship hall during the months of June and July. Not dissimilar in what we did back when the sanctuary was originally constructed 15 years ago, where we had all worship services in here.
I was asked a question in writing. Would we disclose the number of households that make up the $4.2 million? And yes, I will. It's approximately, and I don't have the exact number, Jim, I think it was 162 households roughly that make up that $4.2 million. As Sean indicated when we went through the array of levels of gifts, we've had people at every level, and with a $500,000 gift and several $250,000 gifts, you can see the average went up as a result of that. So you can do the math and see what that average would be. We don't expect anything like that for the remaining 1.4 million. Well, thank all of you for your attendance this evening, and also for the very, very good questions that you asked. I'll conclude by just saying that we have a wonderful church here. In my opinion, and I think that of the Staff Parish Committee, we have the best clergy and the best staff at this church that we've had in quite some time. And we also have an outstanding congregation, and we hope this congregation will, upon reflection, join us in this effort. Just one last comment. If You have made a pledge. Thank you again for that pledge. If you would like, after hearing this discussion, to increase that pledge, please don't restrain. You can see Sean, me, or any member of the committee, or you can just fill out a new pledge form. On the other hand, if after hearing this you want to decrease your pledge, the committee is going to have to say, we don't know who you are. The forms will be outside, as Sean indicated. We really would appreciate it if you guys would take the form, and if you have, and many of you that are here tonight have told us that you're waiting until this meeting to make your final decision. If you now know what that decision is, please complete that form and put it in the basket. It's a separate basket outside. So with that, we'll ask Dan to close with a benediction.
Let's bow together, shall we? Our gracious and loving God, we give you thanks for this night. We give you thanks for Neil and Sean and Bob, for the tremendous amount of time and energy that they have committed, and the people who are on their committees who have worked so hard. We thank you for the vision that you gave to this church a couple of years ago, and for the work that has been done to try and not only understand that vision, but to make that vision concrete. We pray that as we move forward together, that you will guide us and lead us. And as we continue the work on exactly what this will look like, that your Spirit will be so much a part of it, so that when that day comes and we enter into a sanctuary that can serve all of us together, that it will give glory to you in a way that will make us all look up and realize that this was your project from the very beginning. Work within our hearts. Help us to examine. We can't all give the same thing, but we can all make the same kind of sacrifice. So work within our hearts and help us to examine, that we might be a part of what you are doing here at Dunwoody United Methodist Church. In the name of Christ we pray. Amen. Thank you. God bless you.